story of your rocket's flight is just not a peak altitude number. The real story is the trajectory path that your rocket takes during the flight. Does it go straight up or does it arc over? Does it spin as it ascends? What happens once the recovery system is deployed? Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? Will it touch down in a location where you can easily recover it? These are the answers that you can get using the Launch Visualizer. It is an app on the RockSim.com website, and you can test it out right now for free. Finally, you have a way to simulate your rockets that gives you the true information that you need to be successful. And the best part is that you don't have to walk after your rocket after it comes back down to the ground. Experience the fun. Test your rockets right now at RockSim.com. Most Rocketeers seem satisfied with just being told how high their rocket flew, and that's a shame. How did the rocket get to that point? That is what you should really be concerned about. The story of your rocket's flight is just not a peak altitude number. The real story is the trajectory path that your rocket takes during the flight. Does it go straight up or does it arc over? Does it spin as it ascends? What happens once the recovery system is deployed? Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? Will it touch down in a location where you can easily recover it? These are the answers that you can get using the Launch Visualizer. It is an app on the RockSim.com website, and you can test it out right now for free. Finally, you have a way to simulate your rockets that gives you the true information that you need to be successful. And the best part is that you don't have to walk after your rocket after it comes back down to the ground. Experience the fun. Test your rockets right now at RockSim.com. Most Rocketeers seem satisfied with just being told how high their rocket flew, and that's a shame. How did the rocket get to that point? That is what you should really be concerned about. The story of your rocket's flight is just not a peak altitude number. The real story is the trajectory path that your rocket takes during the flight. Does it go straight up or does it arc over? Does it spin as it ascends? What happens once the recovery system is deployed? Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? Will it touch down in a location where you can easily recover it? These are the answers that you can get using the Launch Visualizer. It is an app on the RockSim.com website, and you can test it out right now for free. Finally, you have a way to simulate your rockets that gives you the true information that you need to be successful. And the best part is that you don't have to walk after your rocket after it comes back down to the ground. Experience the fun. Test your rockets right now at RockSim.com. And we're live! Welcome to another edition of RockSim Live. My name is Tim Van Milligan. I am so glad you're here today. We are doing this live, and it's 2 p.m. here in the Mountain Time Zone. We have the live chat going. I've got a monitor over here where I got the live chat going. So if you have a question on how to use RockSim, that's what we're here for. So RockSim, RockSim Pro, or the Launch Visualizer. Yeah, it's the December 30th. So we are closing out the year 2022. It's almost 2023. Hard to believe. I am just so stoked about 2023. I think we're going to have a great year. We got a lot of stuff planned for here at Apogee. I'm raring to go. I just can't wait for the clock to tick over to 12, because starting at 12 midnight, we're going to start a new promotion. Let me show you what that promotion is. There. Oh boy, I'm not showing up on my screen. I didn't get quite set up. Let me turn on my camera. There we go. All right, I'm down in the corner. If you go to the Apogee website, apogeerockets.com, our new promotion is called the Tool of the Month. And so for the year 2023, I am planning on giving away a tool every month for a reduced price. I'm trying to adjust my screen over here. So our first tool is going to be these sanding burrs. I don't know if you can see it down here. These sanding burrs, we've been selling them for a while, and we've been so they're $11.95 normally, but we're going to do an 80% off. So it comes down to $2.39 for the set of 5, which is unheard of. And the reason we're doing it is because I want to get people skilled at building rockets. Because if you're skilled at building rockets and it's easy and it's fun, you're going to do more rockets. And that's how I'm going to make my money on this, is hopefully you're going to buy more rockets, and hopefully you'll buy them here at Apogee Components. So that's why we're doing it. It's a promotion, but you got to spend $100, and then there's a limit of 1 per customer. So that's the terms and conditions. But it's still a great deal, because, tell your friends about it. But we do have only a limited supply of these, and when we run out, we're run out. So if it happens before the end of January, I'm sorry, you'll have to wait until February when we'll do our next tool of the month. And I got a really cool tool lined up for February. It's on this way right now. So we're not even selling it on the Apogee website. But you're not here for tools of the month. You're here for RockSim. So let me go back to the home page. So I did some rearranging on our homepage. So before, the RockSim Live was right in here, and now it's down one panel. So this is RockSim Live, which is what we're doing right now. And if you click on this, it will take you to our archives of our previous episodes. I gotta turn off my Slack because it's popping up alerts. So you'll see we are on, today is December 30th, so we're on episode 102. And because for episode number 100, we did a special deal, and it's still going on. Let me see if I've got, not seeing it. Let me turn it on here. Here it is, right here. We have a special deal going on until January 16, and it's the 10,000 free credits for the Launch Visualizer. and that you have to use the coupon code RSL100, which stands for RockSim Live episode number 100. So it's kind of like, yeah, we weren't very creative in the coupon code, but that's the coupon code. RockSim Live 100, and yeah. So if you want to know how to use the coupon code, go ahead and ask me. But I'm checking the chat over here to see if any questions have coming in. The first question was from Low Budget Bob, and he's asking a general question. Is like, anyone building their Christmas presents? So I'm assuming some of you got rockets for Christmas. I know we sold a lot of gift certificates, so maybe people are going to start redeeming those certificates for rockets. Yeah, so in the archives, which is what you're seeing on my screen now, is we have the link to the video on YouTube, and then we talk about these are the topics that we talked about. And so we talked about what improvements would Tim recommend for a rocket kit. So that one came in from Carlos, asking about, okay, I got a kit, how should I improve it? And so I talked about that. And then we talked about picking a launch site for your rocket, and he wanted the highest flight possible for his rocket, and we used RockSim and the Launch Visualizer to show how you use those two as a team to pick your launch sites and to pick the launch conditions and the angle that you're going to angle the rocket and all that other good stuff. So we talked about that, and then we also made sure that you get your rocket back. So I got no questions that are coming in. What's going on? You guys are experts. You have no questions? So if you're new here, if you've never been to Apogee before and you just stumbled across this video on YouTube, if you go to apogeerockets.com and then come down here to How To and Guides, this menu right here, click on that, and then come down here to Software. And this is where you'll find all the information to start with RockSim. You can download a free trial version, and it runs on both Windows and Mac. You can make a purchase if you want to find out, what are some of the features of RockSim, just kind of a general overview. Click on that one. More specific features are there. There's frequently asked questions like, does it run under Linux? No, I already told you it only runs Windows and Mac. But that's a frequently asked question, so people ask that one all the time. What you can do with RockSim, the system requirements, and things that we have changed. What's the version history? We're on RockSim 10.5 right now. And one of our goals in the new year is to release RockSim 11. 11 is going to be fun. But we're just getting started on it right now, so not a lot to talk about yet. Still no questions. Hopefully this is going out live. Hopefully people are hearing it. There's a whole bunch of people watching, but nobody has any questions. So if you're using RockSim for the first time, there's the video tutorials right here. Like I already showed you, the RockSim Live training right there. And other stuff, some of the more common things, like some people, when they load RockSim, their rocket motors don't show up. So we made a video on how to put your rocket motors back into RockSim. So if that ever happens to you. Okay, Carlos K says, what hints and tricks could you share when you are using reloadable or multi-lane reloadable motors and RockSim? So what am I most likely to goof up? All right, we can answer that. So reloadable motors. So if you are unfamiliar with rocketry, we have two kinds of motors, actually three kinds. There's reloadable motors and single-use motors, and then there's something called the hybrid motors, but we don't sell those because they lost their popularity like about 10 years ago, so we never sold them. but there's still some around called hybrid motors, and it's a mixture of gas for your oxidizer and solid propellant for the fuel. But in rocketry, we have single-use and we have reloadable motors. Estes, if you're familiar with the Estes, all Estes makes are single-use black powder motors. When you get into Aerotech motors or Cesaroni motors, they call theirs the Pro X motors. Those come in reloadable, and Aerotech also makes single-use. Quest makes single-use, but then Aerotech is reloadable motors. So first of all, so if I go to Aerotech on the Apogee website, you can see we have 18 millimeter single-use, and then we have reload propellant kits. Then we have 24 single-use, 24 reload, 29 single-use, 29 reloadable, 29 reload propellant kits. Oh, these are loadable. A difference between loadable and reloadable is they're both, you have to put the propellant inside of them. But loadable means it's kind of like a cross between single-use and reloadable. But you can only use it one time because the casing is plastic, and the plastic can only handle one time with that intense pressure inside of it from the motor burning. So loadable, the advantage of a loadable is it's a little bit cheaper than a single use, but reloadables, the reloadable that you can do over and over again, those are the cheapest because you are providing the labor of putting them together. So they're kind of a cross. So these are loadable and these are reloadables. And then we have the same thing with 38s, single use and reload propellant kits. So if you scroll down on that page, these are all the Aerotech motors, and I don't know if you can see this, but when I scroll, it's a big long page. And if I scroll here, it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, because these are all the Aerotech motors. But if I go back up to the top, so you want to know, are they single use or are they reloadables? And then what you can find out is if you look in this column called manufacturer and type and casing, that's going to tell you single use or reloadable. So if it's a single use motor like this one right here, it will tell you it's Aerotech single use. This one here is not single use, so it must be reloadable. If you want to sort them, these columns you can sort, so you just click on it, and now it's sorted by, well, first of all, it's this one casing is a RC casing, and then there's a whole bunch of single use, and you can see all the single use, and I'm just scrolling through yeah, there's a lot of single use. And eventually we'll get to reloadable. Okay, so here's the reloadable ones, and where you can see that this one has a link. That link tells you what casing it is, and you can click on that link and it will take you to the casing that that goes with this motor. So this K990 DM stands for dark matter, so it's a K motor, so it's a big motor. Its average thrust is 990 newtons, and DM stands for dark matter, which is the type of propellant. This is a sparky motor. And so this is the casing that propellant fits into. So when you buy that motor, you also need to make sure you have the casing, because the propellant without the casing is just a little ball of fire. It needs the casing to contain it, and so that it can be pressurized, so you get high pressure gases flowing out through the nozzle, which creates the thrust according to Newton's second law of motion. So anytime you see a link on them, that means that it is a reload and you have to get the casing. So here's a D24-2 D24T, T stands for, well, actually, that's wrong. This is not White Lightning. That should be Blue Thunder. T always stands for Blue Thunder. So we got a mistake going on there on that D24. And then the -7 is the delay. But it requires this casing. So if I click on the casing, it will take me to, you know, what the casing looks like and what you get when you buy the casing. And it will tell you that it requires rocket motors that are 18 to 20. And when I go back to that motor, yeah, that was an 18 millimeter reload propellant kit. 18 stands for 18 millimeters in diameter, and then 20 stands for the maximum total impulse that the casing can hold. So here's that D24 again. So that's how you select it on the Apogee website. So now if you're in RockSim, I got a rocket kit here, and so Carlos, the answer to your question is there any tips or tricks or anything that you have to be aware of when you're selecting a reload motor versus not a reload motor? And the answer is not really. When you select a motor, the process of selecting a rocket motor is always the same. And we kind of talk about this a lot. You know, you pick your rocket motor based on your rocket and your flying field, because you don't want to pick a rocket motor that's going to fly off of your field, because then you're going to lose your rocket. If you lose the rocket, you also lose that expensive casing in the back end. So when you pick a motor, it doesn't really matter if it's single use or reloadable. Always start with picking a rocket motor that will give you a good flight. And then from that point, then we go back to the Apogee website and find that particular motor. So here I have an Aerobee 170, and if I look at it in 3D, you can see this is a two-stage rocket. This was one of our kit plans from maybe a month or a month and a half ago. We released this as a plan from our newsletter. And we actually kind of cheated here. It's actually direct staging from a small motor in the bottom to a motor up the top. Unfortunately, now that I think about it, this is used as 13 millimeter diameter motors, so that's not a good example of a rocket. So let's open a rocket and pick a motor for it. So RockSim Designs. Let's go with the Zephyr Junior. Save my changes? No. Okay. So here's the Zephyr Junior, and there's the motor tube in the back. So let's go pick a motor. So what I would start with, if you're looking for a recommended motor, you don't know which motor you want. So how do you start? And this is a great example for RockSim, because RockSim does this so well. So let me cancel this. So I'm going to start over. So here we got a rocket. We downloaded the file from the internet somewhere, or it came with RockSim, and you want to build this kit and you want to know which motor you can fly with it. All right, so what you do is you go up here to this button that says, if you hover over it, it says prepare for launch. And if you click on it, it'll take you to the RockSim simulation properties screen. So on this screen right here, just come down here to recommend motors and just click that button. And then it's going to tell you what flying conditions it's going to run these simulations at. And it's going to say, you know, this is a 24 millimeter diameter engine mount, and I can tell that from right over here. This tells me that this body tube that the engine goes into is 24 millimeters. And then this is my weather conditions. And then what it's asking me is, do I want to use my weather conditions or the recommended weather conditions? And if you want to use yours, you have to change the weather conditions. But I'm just going to use the recommended conditions, because this this will, in general, this will give you a good flight. So I click this, and what happens is now RockSim is running simulations, and it's running 52 of them. So there's 52 24 millimeter diameter motors. Some are single use, some are reloadable. I don't care at this point. I'm just trying to figure out which motors are going to be successful. So it ran 52, and then it decided it didn't like a bunch of them. So it kicked out a bunch, and now what's left is 37 motors. So it's rerunning the simulation, and what it's doing this time around is it's finding the optimal delay for these 37 rocket motors that it's running. And it's almost done. We're 24 motors into it, so I'll just kind of wait and take a sip of water. When you get bigger diameter motors, there's a lot more motors. So, in 29 millimeters, there's over 100 motors. In 38 millimeters, there's probably even more than that. So you can see, RockSim's running all these simulations, back to back. And then when it's done, and that, I don't know, took less than a minute, it gives me a list of motors. And then you can see it goes directly to the tab that's called Recommend Motors over here. And it's displaying all the motors that it ran. And you can see in this column right here where it says RockSim recommended, you'll see some are not recommended, some are recommended. And so now at this point, now we're going to start to see, are these single use or reloadable? But if you want to sort this list right here, you can just click on the column tab, and it resorted them, and it put all the non-recommended ones at the top, and then the recommended ones are at the bottom. If you want to resort them again, just click on it again, and now all the recommended motors at the top. If you only want to see the recommended motors, what you do is you right-click with your mouse on that button, and you can see it brought up this menu, and I can choose to show only the recommended motors. So now my list is shorter, but it's only the recommended motors. And there's, I think I recall, there's 37 of them. Okay, so now how do you pick motor from this point? So all these are recommended. They're all going to be safe. So what I would do is start looking at the maximum altitude that this rocket's going to fly. And now this is a new criteria. So the first criteria is it safe? And now the criteria has moved to how high the rocket's going to go. And why is this important? Because if the rocket goes too high, there's a greater risk that it might drift away. And so we want to look at these numbers here to make sure that we're comfortable flying from our particular launch site to that altitude. So I can click on the column and it will sort it. And so now it's sorted from the lowest flying flight up to the highest flying. So the lowest height is 655 feet, and then the highest one is 3,626 feet. So I would, if you're just starting out, I would lean towards picking a motor that's on the low altitude side. You just never know what the wind is going to be like and how far it might drift. We can get an estimate of that here in RockSim. So now, let's say I pick, I don't want to pick that one because it's unknown. Let's pick this one right here. So this motor right here, an E28, it's going to go 1,443 feet. So is that a reload or a single use? So now this is where you have to come back to the Apogee website, and we're going to look for an E28-E28T. So now I'm at the Apogee website, and on the Apogee website, I can just type in E28T, and you can see that it brought up two motors, an E28-4 or an E28-7. Back here in RockSim, which one would we use, the 4 or the 7? Well, there's a column right here in RockSim called the recommended delay. Let me widen this column. You can see recommended delay for the E28 is 7 seconds. So on the Apogee website, if I was here, I would pick the E28-7. So then I would go here, and this is where I could order it. And this is, it's a 3-pack of motors, and it comes with 3 motors and 3 igniters for $40.65. But it does not include the casing. So you can see the casing is not included, and so you would need that. So this is, we just found out it's a reload. Just like that. It requires the 2440 casing, and it gives you a link, and so I'm just going to open it in a new tab. And so here is what that casing looks like. And when you'll take this propellant and you will load it into that casing, and then you have a complete motor. And on this page, if you scroll down, there's a video on how to assemble a reload motor. So it's not as easy as single use, but it's not hard. I mean, people have been doing these things for decades now. So if they can do it, you can do it. If you're smart enough to watch this video, you can do it. So that is, when you're picking motors in RockSim, always pick the motor regardless of whether it is single use or reload. I know there's a lot of people out there, they get fixated and they said, I just bought me a reload casing. I just bought this reload case. What motors, what rockets can I fly it in? And so that they kind of do it backwards. But I do have good news for you. We do have a tool on the Apogee website that will kind of give you a pretty good hint on what rocket kits you can fly that motor in. And if you scroll right here in the frequently asked questions section, here's frequently asked questions about the RMS 2440 motor. If you scroll down, there will be a question. This one's a very common question. People ask us all the time, which rocket kit might use this particular motor? And if you read through it, it says you'll find a tool here. So if you click on that link, this is our page of associated rocket kits. And to use it, there's no instructions, but it's pretty simple. There's one option right here. You just click on that. And this is a list of all the rocket motors. And it's a really long list. Really, 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 really long list. And you don't want to be looking through them one at a time. What you want to be doing is using the search feature right here at the top. So I'm going to type in the E28, and you can see there's an E28 T-7. So I'll just click on that. And what's happening in the background is our website is going through the database, and it's finding every kit that we recommended the E28-7. And so, yeah, there's a long list of kits here that can use that particular motor. So if you buy that casing, there's a lot. And down here's that, what are we flying? We were flying the Zephyr Junior. Here's Zephyr Junior. So you can see that we have run the simulations on all these rocket kits. Basically, when we ran these simulations, we did exactly what I did here. We went, prepare for launch. We clicked on that button. We clicked on recommended motors, and we generated this list. We took this list and we uploaded it into our website. And when we say uploaded it into our website, that meant we had to manually type it into a database. It's not like we could click a button and just upload a new list. I wish it was that easy, because every time a manufacturer releases a new rocket motor, it messes up our lists. For an example, if I go, I know Quest released some new motors just recently. So if you go to the home page and you scroll down, and you can see the new product section, and here's a Quest E35-11, E35-8, and an E35-5. Okay, so this is a brand new motor. And the unfortunate thing is, if I go back to that associated rocket list, where'd that go? Here's the tool, because every rocket motor has this tool linked to. So you click on that, and what did we say that was? The E35. So we're going to type in E35-5. That's a brand new motor, and you'll see that this list of kits is not very long. We haven't, because basically we have to run all the kits in RockSim all over again and then regenerate them, and yeah, it's a chore. So when new motors are released, we have our work cut out for us. Let me see if this is even in the database, or in my database. So choose engine, and what do we say that was? An E35? E35-W. There's an E35 Aerotech, but not the Quest. Okay, so my database is missing that. So if there's not a question, I'll show you that. Maybe we can talk about how to add a motor to your database. So hopefully that ends the question of what do you do when you're picking a reload versus a single-use motor. Basically, there's no difference. Just pick the motor that gives you a good flight, that you have a good chance of getting it back, because I don't want you to lose your rocket, and then buy the motor. I don't like it when people, have a casing and say, will this, can I force it into my rocket? It's possible, but I don't like to recommend you do that, because that can lead you to situations where it's not safe. And I want you to be successful, and that's the biggest criteria here. Low Budget Bob says, if you make a rocket overstable, will RockSim show that and not run a simulation? And he just said, I just answered my own question in RockSim. Trying it in RockSim. That's a very, very good thing that Bob did. Just try it. So on this particular rocket, if I go and look at it in 2D, we have the stability right here, a margin of 1.32. So this is a stable rocket. Stable meaning that the center of gravity is in front of the center of pressure. If we make it overstable, what happens? So let's make it overstable. How do you make a rocket overstable? So the definition of a stable rocket is where the center of gravity, this symbol right here, is ahead of the center of pressure. And we like to see the distance between the two approximately at least one body tube in diameter. So here's the one diameter. So if you look at that distance there, we want this distance to be equal at least that amount. And it will tell you exactly how much it is. This one has a ratio of 1.32 body tube diameters that these are apart. So that's okay. When you're greater than 2, RockSim will tell you that, and it will say the margin is overstable. So to make the center of gravity forward of the center of pressure, there's 3 ways you can do this. One is add nose weight into the nose cone, and what that does is it changes the balance point of the rocket. And so that's the center of gravity. So that's going to shift forward if we put in nose weight. Another thing that we can do is make the rocket longer. And again, that's going to move the center of gravity forward, and it's going to make it overstable. And then the third thing we can do is increase the size of the fins or move the fins further rearward on the rocket. So the further they are in the back of the rocket, the more stable it is. And then you can put them even further back, and it's going to be overstable, or if you make them bigger. So what we'll do here in this case is let's put in nose weight. So I'm going to go to the rocket design components, and I'm going to click on the nose cone. You can see the nose cone's highlighted, and then I'm going to come over here to mass objects. So this is something that's heavy, and it doesn't have a defined shape. So you might think of it as a lump of clay. So whenever you add a new component, it always tries to look in the database first. So that's what came up here, and I'm just going to cancel out of the database. And then if you look at the drawing, you see this little blob here. That's our mass, and it's actually on the tip of the nose cone, and we don't want it on the tip, so we want it move it back, and I can slide it back here with the slider bar, and it's slid inside the rocket. And if I look at it in 2D, I can see it here. So here's my mass, and then we need to tell it how much mass we have. Right now it's 0 grams. So if I make this like 100 grams, before I type that in, I want you to look at where the center of gravity is right here, and it will tell you exactly how far back it is. The CG is 20.2733 inches, and that's measured from the tip of the nose cone. So it's 20.27 inches back from the tip of the nose cone. And when we add more weight, this number is going to get smaller because this is going to move further forward. So I'm going to type in 100 grams here. 105, no, 100 grams. And then hit the tab key, and we're going to watch that move forward. And it didn't. Why didn't it? Because it says here that the mass override is on. Oh, I'll cancel out of that. I got to turn the mass override off. So here's the mass override. And it says use these for the simulation. So I'm going to uncheck this, because what this mass override means is it's after the fact. After I built my rocket, I weighed it, and my weight and where it balances were different from what RockSim calculated. And so the easy way to change it is to just use mass override. So you can make RockSim agree with what your rocket actually is when you built it. That's what mass override is about. For this particular design, I think when I created it, or whoever created it, they used mass override. To me, that's kind of cheating, but it is what it is. So when I unselect it, it went from 187 grams up to 246 grams. So basically, what RockSim calculate the weight as was heavier than what it actually was in real life. And so they just, whoever made the design, I don't know if it was me or not. It might have been Christopher. Because normally I don't use mass override because of this very situation where it just causes confusion. So right now we're going to ignore this, go back to the rocket design components, go back to the nose cone, add a mass object, cancel out of the database, and we're going to change the mass to, well, first let's move it back a little bit inside the nose cones, because we're going to kind of like push clay into the nose cone here. So that's kind of where it's going to end up after we're done pushing. And we're going to use 100 grams, and now watch this move forward. And so now the margin is 3.36 calibers. Calibers is the diameter. So the distance between this and this is 3.36 times the diameter of the rocket. So now it's overstable. So now if we fly this rocket, I am actually in RockSim Pro here. So RockSim and RockSim Pro are the same up until this point, until you go to simulations. So we're going to see it in 3 dimensions instead of being in 2 dimensions. So flight events, we got a maximum parachute ejection delay here. Starting state, we have a 60-inch launch rod, so our launch rod is 60 inches. It's pointed 16.5 degrees from vertical, and it has a direction. It's like a compass right here. If you think of this as a compass, north would be up, east would be to the right, south is down here, and west is this way. So we're kind of pointing to the northwest. Under our launch site, I'm not sure where this launch site is, but it's 878 feet above sea level, and here's the latitude and the longitude. And when we click the flight profile, we can see what this rocket's going to do. It's thinking. Okay, it went 1,159 feet. And it's going to load the launch visualizer, which is going to give me a 3D view of my rocket. And it's just taking a second to load. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Oh! Yeah, it's loading. I think I have a bad internet connection because it's trying to load the maps in the background, and it's, or else there's something going on. Well, I can't see the rocket launch if I can't see what's going on in the background. All I can see that the rocket took off, and it's arcing over, and I can kind of see something in the background. Oh, we're in a blinding snowstorm. Okay, so I can see if I can at least see the trajectory here. I'm going to zoom out. Oh, I can't see very much. What I'm looking for, there's the rocket and the parachute. See this green line right here? That is the rocket trajectory. Okay, so yeah, I can't see anything here. But I'm thinking that see this red line right here? This is probably, no, this right here is the launch point. And then the rocket went up, it arced over, parachute popped out, and then it started descending to the ground. I can do this. I can run the simulation in the launch visualizer, and we can see it there. Should we do that? Oh, Budget Bob says, yeah, that's probably snow. Let's load it in the launch visualizer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my design. Oops, that's open. Clicked on the wrong button. Cancel that. Save. Okay, so we saved it. I got to know where I saved it. In my RockSim Designs folder. Okay, so To go to the launch visualizer, you need a browser window, and I'm going to open up a new Chrome window here, and you just go to RockSim.com. And the reason I'm doing this is my programmers today said they added a new feature into the software at RockSim.com. They added a new feature, and I wanted to see what it's like. And I'm getting snow there too. Which kind of tells me that it's probably not the software. It's probably something going on with the internet. Yeah, man. Okay, so that's not working. So we will, if you can't see the rocket taking off, it's not worth it. We can do it in RockSim. In RockSim, instead of being in 3D, it's only in 2D. But at least I can see what the trajectory looks like, and that's the important thing, because I want to compare a 2D flight profile. I want to compare a stable versus overstable. RockSim Designs, I think it was in the Zephyr Junior. Zephyr Junior, so we're going to open that rocket right there. Okay, so here's our last simulation. I got to rerun it. Just make sure that everything's the same. I think we were starting state. We were at like a 16-degree launch angle, if I recall correctly. Launch condition 787 feet, and I don't remember what the wind was. But we gotta, we'll change this to, we'll leave it at 8 miles an hour. And then we will hit the flight profile. And this number might change, and it changed a little bit because it's different in 2 dimensions versus 3 dimensions. Because in 3 dimensions, we got wind hitting it at different angles, and that's gonna change the trajectory. So here's the rocket on the ground. When we launch, the rocket's taking off. You can see that what happened was we were angled, and then the rocket kind of wanted to arc into the wind, and that was actually pretty good because we want the apogee point. The apogee point is the highest point. We want it to remain inside of this cone right here, and if it had not wanted to weathercock into the wind, it probably would have gone out of the cone, and that would have been a bad flight. So in this situation, depending on the launch angle that you use, is going to determine whether overstable could be good or bad. In this case, being overstable was actually good because it kept us inside of the cone. Yeah, that's actually really good, but it's still drifting pretty far. We'll see what it goes. It goes 1,511 feet downwind. So now let's run the same simulation, and let's run it with the rocket instead of 16 degrees with the wind. Let's make it a negative 16 degrees, so it's going into the wind. So the only thing that we're changing here, before we were launching this way, now we're going to be launching this way. That's the only thing we're changing. And we'll see what happens on this flight. Okay, so now, I don't know if you saw it back here, but we can see the first flight was 1264. The second one was 100 feet shorter, 1,184 feet versus 1264. So not quite 80 feet difference. So here's the rocket, and now you can see it's kind of pointed this direction. And when we launch it, see, now we're definitely going to be outside of the cone. So I don't like being outside the cone, because what that means is the rocket went more horizontal than up. And I don't like doing that, because if something should happen, like maybe the parachute doesn't come out, well, this rocket's going to continue to go way far away, and we don't know what's way out there, way out off to the left. But it is going to come down pretty close to the pad. Remember, the last time we launched, we got a range of 1,500 feet. Now we're at 136 feet. So ideally, you know, this is a nice short walk to retrieve the rocket, but I would call this unsafe. And where the other one, it was safe, but it's going to be a long walk to get the rocket. So there's a trade-off, but safety always comes first. There's just no doubt about that. You know, you have to be safe. All right, so, oh, we've got Art Applewhite here. He says howdy from Texas. Cool. Okay, so that is kind of stable versus overstable. And you can experiment with RockSim by doing understable. Or there's marginally stable and then unstable. And definitely don't want to launch unstable. But marginally stable, you might think about it. Like, we can make this marginally stable. Marginally stable means that this number right here, the distance apart that the center of gravity and the center of pressure are, is going to be smaller than 1, but greater than 0. And we can do that by shifting the center of gravity pretty close to the center of pressure. And again, we're going to use a mass override. So I'm going to go to the rocket design components. I'm going to take this mass that's in the nose cone. First, I'm going to delete it. I'm going to say yes. And so now we're at a margin of 1.23. And if I want to get it closer, again, I have 3 choices. I can put a mass object. You want to put your mass object behind the center of gravity. So that means it will shift further to the rear of the rocket. You can make the rocket shorter, or you can take your fins and move them forward on the rocket. In this case, what I'll do is I'm going to move this center. I'm going to use a mass object. So this time I'm going to put the mass object in the body tube. Click on the mass object button. Cancel out of the database. I forget what we used, 100 grams before. Okay, so here's the current location of the mass object, and I'm just going to slide it back. You can see my margin is still greater than 1. When we get to less than 1, see, now it shifts to marginal. I'm going to make it pretty small. So right there, so 0.19. Okay, so this is, you know, the same weight as that we used before. And we'll launch it again. We're not going to change anything. So the last time we did this, our starting state was we were pointed into the wind by 16 degrees. And it landed about 136 feet from the pad. So if we run it again by clicking the flight profile button, so there's the rocket, and we launch it. Whoa, okay, so you see what happened there. This rocket went unstable. It just did not like the conditions of the flight. And we can see that instead of getting to 1,184 feet, it only made it to 204 feet. So as soon as it cleared the launch rod, it was so marginally stable that it just couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle the wind, and it went unstable. So this is definitely, you don't want to fly that. Okay, so you can experiment, and that's what the purpose of RockSim is, to try all these different configurations so that when you go out to the launch field, you're confident that the rocket's going to fly safe and you're going to get it back and have a great time. But Low Budget Bob's asks, if a rocket doesn't turn into the wind, should it be balanced to be more overstable and turn into the wind? This is a subjective answer. It depends on what you desire for the flight. If you want it to turn into the wind, then make it more overstable. If you don't, see, what I was hoping here on this particular flight was that the rocket wouldn't be affected by the wind so much. So let's run this simulation one more time, well, maybe twice more. So the first time, what I want to do is on my starting state, instead of launching it into the wind, let's launch it straight up. So my launch angle is going to be 0 degrees. So now instead of going into the wind, we're going straight up. And we'll see what it does this time. And it still went unstable. I could tell that immediately because I saw that number pop up right there. And it was even lower than that number. So it did not go high. So if I run the simulation, you can see it just the back end just immediately came around. So now what we'll do is we're going to take that mass object that we had. Oops, not that one. Mass object, which is right now back here. We're going to edit that. And I'm going to slide it towards the front. Okay, so before we had a margin of like 0.19. I'm going to make it like 0.59. So it's still marginally stable, but it should, I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that it will fly stable. So the only thing that we changed now was we just shifted that center of that mass from back here to here. And we're going to run the simulation again. Look at it in the flight profile. We always look at the flight profile. Don't run a simulation without looking at the flight profile, because you're missing too much information. I get questions all the time like this. It's like, the last time I ran my simulation, it went on 1,184 feet. This time it only went 204. What happened? Well, my first question is, did you look at the flight profile? Because if you look at the flight profile, you can see that the rocket went unstable. And that, you can answer your own question. Okay, so the rocket takes off, and this time it did stay straight. And we are going really high this time. Okay, so it went nice and straight. The wind hasn't changed. It's still 8 miles an hour. But you can see, because the center of gravity and the center of pressure are so close together, the rocket doesn't weathercock as much into the wind. We were going straight up, and it did weathercock a little bit. And we can see that because of the range right here. If we launch straight up and the wind didn't affect it at all, then the range, the distance it is from the launch pad, should be 0. But we're at a negative 76 feet right here. So that tells us that the rocket did go into the wind a little bit, but you can see that it looks really straight, So being, when your margin is under 1, but greater than that, whatever it is that caused it to be unstable, then you get a nice flight. You get a really nice flight. That's where you're going to get your highest altitudes. The downside of this one here, it didn't land so far away. It still was 773 feet. So the first one we did was 1,500 feet. So that's really far. So your next question that I can probably anticipate is, does RockSim have a way of automatically calculating that optimum distance between the center of gravity and the center of pressure? And the answer is no, it doesn't. It would have to run thousands and thousands of simulations to figure that one out, because it would have to add a little bit of mass, move the center of gravity, and so you're constantly moving things around, and there'd be so much going on. You need a supercomputer to do it. But human intelligence is pretty good, because before we ran it with, a margin of 0.19. Now we're at 0.59, and we did 1.23. And so you can kind of see that, somewhere between too close and too far is an optimal. And you can kind of zero it in probably within like 5 or 6 simulations, but you have to do them manually. I guess if we had, artificial intelligence, that could probably help too, but it's still, there's a lot of variables involved here. And yeah, that'd be pretty cool if we could pull it off, but I'm not sure. I'm thinking about it in my head, because like I said, we're trying to think of new features for RockSim version 11. That would be cool, but I'm not sure if we're going to get there. Okay, so that answers Bob's question. If a rocket doesn't turn into the wind, should it be balanced to be more overstable to turn into the wind? And the answer, again, Low Budget Bob, is it's subjective. It's what you want it to do. Do you want it to be more safe and go into the wind? Or when we're marginally stable, like right here, there was that chance that it could go unstable. And so this is an engineering trade-off that engineers have to decide. I would err on the side of making it more overstable, because overstable does not mean it's unsafe. That means it's just going to weathercock more, and at least it's predictable. It's always going to go that way. You don't have to worry about it going unstable. And so that's the predictability part. Is I'd rather be predictable and lose a little bit of performance than have that margin of unpredictability in there and having it go unstable and being unsafe. So yes, I would probably make it more overstable, but you do have an option as the designer that you can try to get that margin closer together. Do this, and if you're going to do this on a high power rocket, what I would highly recommend is you build a smaller version of the rocket that you can test, that's lighter, that's not going to go as high, that's, has less mass and has less potential of doing damage. And that's kind of what the Zephyr and the Zephyr Junior are. Is the Zephyr Junior is a smaller version of the Zephyr. So if I type in Zephyr here, we have the Zephyr and the Zephyr Junior, and I think we had a picture of both of them side by side. Let's see if I got one here. I'm just scrolling through all the little images here. Oh, yeah, there was one. It was at the very end. There's 28 images, and it's the 28th image. We're on 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So here's the big version of the Zephyr. Here's the small one, which is what we were playing with here in RockSim. Yeah. So if you're going to be experimenting, so you would run your experiments in RockSim, then build a small version, test it to make sure that that distance between the center of gravity and the center of pressure will still work in whatever wind conditions you're actually flying in real life. So fly this one first, make sure it works. Then you can fly this one with the same ratio between the center of gravity and the center of pressure. And that's why we use calibers, is because it's a ratio, and it doesn't matter what the size of the rocket is. How stable or not it's going to be is going to depend on that ratio, the distance they are apart. So if they both have a ratio of, I think what we were in 0.59, they'll fly pretty much identical. And that's what we do as aeronautical engineers, is we look at that ratio. And we always build subscale models. Subscale means smaller than the big one. You know, when NASA builds a big airplane or a big rocket, they always test it in the wind tunnel, small size. They don't build it, they don't test the big one in the wind tunnel. They start small, see if that works. If that works, then they're going to go big. And we should be doing the same thing as Rocketeers. So we are at the end of the day. Terry Wheelock just showed up. Sorry we missed you, Terry. So again, I do have on the screen our launch visualizer credits. So we have 10,000 free credits. So you can sign up for those. And hopefully it's my internet that's causing the problem with the launch visualizer and not your internet. Anyway, so that coupon has to be used before January 16th. As far as RockSim Live, next Friday is January 6th. And I'm going to be out because my daughter has a sporting event. She's in high school, and she's on the varsity swimming and diving team, and she's a diver. And she has a meet next Friday. And so I have to go to that, so I won't be here. And Michelle, she's off too. Her birthday is this week. I won't tell you which day, but it's this week. And so she's going to take some time off. So she's not going to be here as well, because she's the backup for me doing these RockSim Lives. And I don't have a third backup yet. And we're working on that, but we're not quite there yet. So next week, January 6th, we won't be here, but then we will be back after that. And what day will that be? Let me check my calendar here. Come on, calendar, turn on. Yeah, that is January 13. So we'll be back January 13 for our next RockSim Live. And this is going to be the first time we actually, I think, if I recall, in 102 episodes that we actually missed a week. So I'm kind of sad about that, because we had this streak going. But you have to forgive me for missing, because I have to go watch my daughter dive. She is ranked in the state of Colorado. She's way up there. But she's good for Colorado. But some of the bigger states like Texas, because they have so many good divers, she wouldn't beat, is where she's ranked in Texas as she is in here in Colorado. Being in a small state, less population means that she can rank higher. So wish my daughter good luck. And we'll see you on January 13th at 2 p.m. Mountain Time Zone, which is 4 p.m. on the East Coast. And it's like 10 or 11 p.m. in the Netherlands, which we haven't had our person from the Netherlands check in. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to end this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go out and launch something.